All right, well, hello everyone. This is Rebecca Dowling. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Stormwater Quality here at the City of Oklahoma City. I'd like to officially welcome everyone to our first installment of our second annual monthly webinar series. We will begin momentarily, so I want to provide some information to help enhance everyone's experience during the presentation today. In order to reduce background noise, please keep everyone mute themselves and make sure that everyone stays muted during the presentations. If anyone has any questions during those presentations, feel free to type them into chat. Brooke and I will be monitoring chat for questions, and we will have our guest speakers ask or answer as many questions as we have time for today. If anyone would like to receive a certificate of attendance for today's webinar, I'll be posting that information into chat for everyone. You will need to send an email to Ms. Heavenly Mendenhall if you would like to receive that certificate of attendance and one PDH for today's webinar. If everyone will again keep themselves muted, that will make it just a little bit smoother today. So each of our presentations in this webinar series will be available within a week or so after the scheduled webinar date on our website under Stormwater Workshops. And the section is going to be called our 2022 Floatables webinar, not Floatables webinar series, but a Stormwater webinar series. Today's session, of course, will be the January edition. And I will post a link to that website where you can find those presentations toward the end of today's program. Pardon me while I mute people again. Please, again, attendees, please keep yourselves muted during this presentation. Thank you. If anyone has any questions at this time, feel free to type those into chat. But without further ado, I will begin a very short webinar series welcome presentation.
Good afternoon and welcome to our monthly Stormwater Quality webinar series. We're excited to continue providing monthly opportunities to learn how you can help keep our local waterways clean. Remember, we're all downstream from someone else, so we all need to work together to protect our waterways. Last year, we had an incredible series. We heard from several internal staff as well as interesting and informative guest speakers. We aligned our webinars in 2021 around the central theme of floatable materials, providing more traditional content for our construction and industrial permittees, as well as unique material information, all related to the floatables theme. During this year's series, you will have the opportunity again to hear from several of our own stormwater quality staff, as well as several guest speakers. During the January presentation, you will hear the construction section supervisor and her staff describe how to implement and maintain a land disturbance stormwater pollution prevention plan. In February, you will hear about stormwater pollution prevention plans for industrial facilities. March will feature our first guest speaker of the year, Jeanette Nance with Keep Oklahoma Beautiful. The webinar series continues with topics from wastewater utilities, the Department of Environmental Quality, and a feature in September discussing the utilization of compost for erosion control. We hope to see you each month, so be sure to tune in. Registrations were not carried over from year to year, so be sure to register yourself and any interested coworkers so you don't miss out on any information. As we've briefly mentioned, each of the presentations will be available online within a week or so after the presentation is aired live. It will be available on the workshops section of our Stormwater Quality website. I'll post a direct link to that page into chat toward the end of today's webinar. We're keeping the 2021 series on our website indefinitely as well, so you can refer back to it or any of your favorite webinars anytime. It seems that we're being rather ambitious this year since we're adding virtual lunch and learns to the mix. You will need to register for each of these events separately. We're posting the registration link and sponsor information for the February Lunch and Learn into chat, and you can always reach out to Brooke for more information as well. Some of the vendors sponsoring these events have new products and tools that you may not have heard of before, so please be sure to tune into these presentations. You could learn something new, which might help streamline your stormwater protection practices. As always, anytime we provide information regarding specific vendors or products, it's not considered an endorsement. We provide the information to help you in your research to determine the best products and services that will benefit your own stormwater program. These events will not be available on our website, but we will have a recording available for request via email. Some of our presentations will be live and some will be pre-recorded. We do our best to provide as much detailed, accurate information as possible while also working with the presenter's strengths and their schedule. We live and work in a beautiful community here in Oklahoma City. For more information about stormwater, what we're up to, and local regulations, be sure to visit our website.
All right, up next is the main presentation for today's webinar. Today we're going to hear from two presenters. Up first is Monica Walls. Monica joined the Oklahoma City Stormwater Quality Division in May of last year as the Environmental Unit Supervisor for the Construction, Permitting, and Auditing section. Monica holds a Master of Science from the University of Oklahoma and a Bachelor of Science from East Central University. She brings 27 years of environmental health and safety experience to our organization. During her tenure, she has provided HSE support and guidance to organizations in general industry, agriculture, oil and gas, and the government. When not at work, Monica is spending time with family and friends, attending sporting events, and enjoying the outdoors. Josh Adams will be joining Monica today as a speaker. Josh joined the Oklahoma City Stormwater Quality Management Division in 2004 as an environmental technician for the environmental section, where he led various projects such as stream assessments, water sampling, and pollution investigations. In 2018, Josh transitioned to the construction permitting and auditing section. Since that time, he has been advising permit holders of stormwater quality requirements and conducting inspections in the southeast portion of Oklahoma City. When not at work, Josh enjoys spending time with family, friends, and attending sporting events, as well as enjoying the outdoors. Again, if anyone has any questions during today's presentation, please be sure to type them into chat. Monica, if you're ready, please share your screen and begin your presentation.
Good afternoon. This afternoon, I'd like to talk a little bit about implementing a stormwater pollution prevention plan. And basically, this is going to be a guide for construction sites. As we go ahead and take a look at a new project that we want to implement within the city, there are certain things we need to plan for so that we can protect our quality of our water. And to obtain a permit, you'll need to submit a stormwater pollution prevention plan. And a lot of times we are asked, what is that? It's basically a document that is required, to obtain your permit. So you'll submit a notice of intent and also your SWIP. And it's a document that's used to describe the activity to prevent stormwater contamination, to control sedimentation and erosion control, and to comply with the requirements of the Clean Water Act. Now, the Clean Water Act has been delegated down to the state and to the city, and we've done that through permit requirements. So if you have a project that's over 1 acre, you're going to want to permit that with the state, and you're also going to want to permit that with us in Oklahoma City. And the SWIP is going to go through and help us identify ways in which we have potential sources of pollution and what measures we need to take to protect those. We'll describe the practices to reduce those pollutants and stormwater discharges. And we'll also go through and outline procedures that we will take as an operator to implement the requirements outlined in the land disturbing activity permit. That is what we will issue here at Oklahoma City. So I do want to specify that we have Oklahoma City Municipal Code that outlines if we are going to be performing any type of land disturbing activities, then we require a permit. And you'll want to go through and prepare this document before you start the project so you can plan on how you protect the stormwater, the water quality within our near our project. So a lot of times as we go through and we're helping individuals through this process, we get a number of questions. And so we want to talk about a little of those today and answer them for you. And the first question we always get is, who needs to have a stormwater pollution prevention plan? And this comes out basically to say that anyone that is going to be a construction site operator is required to have a SWIP. And this can be someone who has operational control over the construction plans, or the person or individual company that has the day-to-day activities or responsibility oversight of the project itself. So this could include owners of the property, it could include developers, or it could include any, and even general contractors. So we want to go through and make sure they understand what their role and responsibilities are and how they implement this document. And the next question we always get is, what is this? What is a SWPPP? And this is a plan that we develop and use to proactively manage stormwater discharges. When is it required? Well, we want to go through and do our planning and put things in place before we start the land disturbing activities. So it's important that you do this before you go out there and start performing your grading, clearing the property or doing anything like that where you're disturbing the land. Where does the focus need to be? As we go through this process and look at certain key things of your project, we need to focus on what activities, where you have land disturbing activities involved, where you have potential pollutants that are being stored or used on the project site, and what are our nearby waterways, where we could have potential contaminants or pollutants going to those waterways. And last question we get often is, why is the SWPPP required? And the SWPPP is required because what we have learned over time, as we have developed projects and we have through lessons learned, is that we have some activities that occur at a construction site that can cause harm or damage to our rivers, our lakes, and even to our municipal separate storm, our MS4. So we want to go through and take measures to protect them. And to do so, we have outlined this process. And then in doing so, there's certain key things that have to be in the program or plan. And we'll go through and talk about those throughout today's presentation. And so what type of information is going to be contained in the SWPPP? There's certain required elements. And again, we have templates available for you posted on our site, on our website. But if you want to see the project and SWPPP contact information throughout the life cycle of your project, if you want to know who we can talk to, who we can regarding the project itself, the milestones, and any issues or compliance concerns we may have. We also need to know the site and activity that's going to take place. Are we going to be performing demolition? Is it a new building? What type of activities are you planning to take place? And the description of the site activity, we also want to see a map. Where is this project located? And also an erosion control plan. This outlines what measures we're going to be taking throughout the project to protect the stormwater. We want to identify any potential pollutants that could be involved with the project. And also talk about controls that you have in place or plan to put in place to reduce potential pollutants. Maintenance and inspection procedures. As part of the permit that you will be issued, you will have certain requirements that are laid out for you. Conducting inspections is one of those. We want to make sure that you know that they're required, and we also want to make sure they're documented so we can see what you've found during that inspection process and how you addressed and fixed the issues that were identified during that process. We'll also take a look at your best management practices and maintaining those, make sure they're in good shape, in good condition for the intended purpose that they were installed. You have a couple of amendments that will be in your SWPPP too, as far as keeping track of training records, your inspections and so forth. And last but not least, your certification. And this is stating and signing that I understand that I have roles and responsibilities to comply with this permit, and that I'm acknowledging that. And then we will work with you throughout the life of your permit to make sure that we help you meet the intent of all of the measures we've outlined in the SWPPP itself. To help you through this process, I do want to point out to you that we have templates available on our website. So if you go to the Oklahoma City Stormwater Quality website, you will see two types of templates. First, you're going to see an Oklahoma City template. That's labeled as 6.2 OKC, construction SWPPP less than 1 acre. And these are for projects that will be permitted with the city by themselves because it's less than 1 acre. You can use that 6-page template, go through and walk through the process and filling it out. We'll talk about how you do that through the remainder of our presentation. But if you have a situation where your project is larger than 1 acre, you not only have to permit with us within the city of Oklahoma City, but you also need to permit with the state. And so to reduce your paperwork burden, we will then accept the second template, and that is the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality Construction SWPPP template. And here you'll go through the same process, walk through the template, answer the information. We'll kind of go through the process today, but you would submit that to us at the city and also to the state to obtain your permits. So let's take a look at the process that we're going to go through to develop our SWPPP. Basically, there's 4 different phases. First, we want to need to take a look and do a site assessment and planning. Next, we want to select what erosion and sediment controls we need to have in place to protect the project itself. Select good housekeeping BMPs and outline inspection, maintenance, and record-keeping practices that we will plan to use throughout the life of the project. So let's take a look at each one of these a little bit more in depth. First, we'll start with site assessment and planning. And here we need to go through it, basically provide some information to us about the project itself. We need to know the type of project you're planning to perform, where it's located, when you expect to start the project, and how long you think it will take. We also need to understand the sequence and timing of activities that you plan as far as throughout the life cycle of the project. So this is an estimate. This SWPPP is a living document. You can update it as you go, but give us your best estimate as you start to plan the project out. The size of the project itself, and then also we want to have an estimate of how big or an area you expect to have total land disturbance. And we like to see this expressed in acres on your notice of intent. Nearby waterways or wetlands that could be in the area of the project location. Now, this information, a lot of times you can do it in the office environment, gathering it and documenting this information. But we are going to ask for some information that may require you to do a site visit to your property, to the site, if you haven't done so in the past. Because we also are going to be asking you some specific questions about stormwater drainage patterns. When it rains, which way is the water flowing? Is it going through your property? Okay, do you have where are your discharge points? Because these are areas of concern that you're going to want to know about as you try to lay out the project, implement best management practices, and so forth. Do you have any specific concerns with slopes? What type of soil do you have? Are there any natural features that need to be taken into consideration as we do our planning and looking at where controls need to be placed? So this is a key portion of the site assessment and planning process. But we also need to know what type of potential pollutants will be involved with the project. So we're going to ask you to identify those too. So we have a couple examples here for you. We got concrete. Are you going to have cleaning solvents on location as far as your project? Obviously, if you're performing land disturbing activities, you may have stockpiles of sediment, dirt, soil. Do you have any equipment on site where you're going to have a situation where you can have a hydraulic fuel spill or fueling operations for the equipment? What type of projects going to be done that requires plastic, adhesives, anything like that? And obviously portable toilets for the employees or the contractors that will be on site. Not only do we want you to identify what potential pollutants are going to be present, but we also need to know where they're located, because this is going to help you lay out your plan on how you implement those controls. Now, bear in mind, this is just a short list for you, it's not all inclusive. But as you go through and identify what potential pollutants are on your site and where they're located, also be asking yourself, do I have a spill kit? If I should have a spill or release, are we able to contain that to prevent it from going off-site to a body of water, where we could have a potential situation where we have a spill or release? Next, we need to take a look at identifying approaches to protect natural resources. And here we want to assess the potential impacts that we could have to nearby waterways or impaired body of water, endangered or threatened species, or even historical sites. And so again, we've put some resources out on our website to help you make this determination. So if you'll go to the Oklahoma City Stormwater Quality webpage, you will see a section labeled Maps. And here we have posted for you the major watersheds drainage basins map and also the sensitive waters map. And these will help you find the information that you need to make this assessment. And another resource that you have available to you is if you want to go to the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality website. They have the data viewer. I've provided the website here for you for your reference. You can also do a Google search and it will come up for you. And as you go to this website and you use this map, you want to make sure that you select the appropriate layers to get the information that you're looking for. So you're going to want to select the 303D water bodies. You're going to want to select IR water bodies. And you're also going to want to select the Lake Thunderbird Watershed and the completed TMDLs. Now, when you select these, you're also going to want to, you'll notice when you look at the filter layer, that they have a number of different years available to you. So be sure to select the most current year as you're doing your evaluation. Once you have all the information collected there, again, you're going to want to note this in your SWIP so that you'll know what type of body waters we're discharging to, what additional measures we need to take. If one of the things that you will discover is that you may have a project that's going to be involved with the Lake Thunderbird Watershed. And that comes into play with a number of things that can happen. And Josh, do we have activities in the Lake Thunderbird Watershed? And if so, do they have specific additional or specific stormwater quality requirements?
Yes, Monica, they do. So if you're going to be building in, or if you have a land disturbance taking place within a TMDL or a watershed or an impaired water body with the TMDL, restrictions are going to be a little bit more stringent. So requirements do change a little bit, in a impaired watershed system, specifically the Thunderbird Watershed. Your vegetative buffer zones inside the Thunderbird Watershed, say if you're working around a creek, stream, drainage channel, you're going to require a 100-foot natural vegetative buffer between the limits of your disturbance and that receiving creek, drainage channel, stream. And that's going to be from the top of the bank, top of the channel, to the limits of your disturbance. If you guys are, doing land disturbance outside of the Thunderbird Watershed, then those natural buffer zones are going to drop to 50 feet. Now, a lot of projects, you're not going to be able to get 100 feet or 50 feet. So the option is, install controls, erosion and sediment controls that are going to give that same protection as the 100-foot buffer, vegetative buffer zone. Sediment basins inside a Thunderbird Watershed. If you have a large project, 5 acres or more, that's draining to the same area, it's going to require a sediment basin to collect all that runoff and potential, sediment that might be discharged otherwise into the watershed receiving streams. Like I say, if your area is small, you probably not have to worry about, any sediment basins as long as you're under the 5 acres and they don't drain. That 5 acres doesn't drain to all one area. Your site inspections on your erosion controls and BMPs are going to go down to a 7-day frequency. So if you're outside of the Thunderbird Watershed, you have an option of either, picking a 7-day inspection frequency or a 14-day inspection frequency. Inside a impaired watershed, you're going to be, down to a 7-day, once a week. And then obviously, within 24 hours of a half-inch rainfall event, you'll need to make inspections of those BMPs and controls. As far as corrective actions goes, whenever you find some deficiencies in your controls, the corrective actions in the Thunderbird Watershed are going to need to take place within 7 days. They need to be corrected within 7 days of finding that. And I believe that, honestly, I believe that that's the same outside of the Thunderbird Watershed also. You have those things in place within 7 days of actually identifying the problem. Stabilization of land disturbance inside the Lake Thunderbird Watershed. Stabilization measures must be initiated immediately where land disturbing activities have permanently or temporarily stopped and do not plan to resume for 14 days or greater. So say you've stopped some section of your project with land disturbance on it and you don't plan on having any activity over there for 14 days, 2 weeks. Well, now you need to stabilize that and have that stabilized within a 7-day period. Outside, your Thunderbird Watershed, that's going to be a 14-day a period that you're able to have that stabilized. Nutrient testing inside of a impaired watershed or the Thunderbird watershed, it's going to require projects to conduct a soil nutrient test prior to fertilizer application. If fertilizer is needed, application must be limited to meet actual nutrient needs. If there are no plans to fertilize, make sure your SWPPP clearly states that there's no fertilizer going to be used on this project. I think that's about it, Monica. I try to go through there quick. Did I miss something?
No, I think you
So-
hit all the key topics. And then the point there that Josh was making is, as you go through and do these evaluations and you learn about the characters of both of the watersheds or impaired waterways near your project, that impacts the actions that we're going to have to take as you implement your project. The city wants everyone to implement their projects, but we want to do so in an environmentally responsible manner. Did you have anything else to add there, Josh?
No, just like I say, just restrictions are a little bit more stringent inside of, that Thunderbird watershed, because we're just trying to keep sediments and everything, that sediment load out of the receiving streams. So just protect it a little bit better down there.
And one of the things, a number of things that you can do during that process is the next step in developing your SWPPP, and that is selecting erosion and sediment controls, best management practices. Now, erosion control BMPs basically are our first line of defense. And these are steps that we take where we minimize the disturbed area and protect natural features. We don't go through there, and if we can keep vegetated areas intact, that helps. Okay. If you need to, you're going to go through and phase construction activities if that's possible. Control stormwater flow onto and through the project if you can divert it to certain areas where there may be a concern. Stabilize soils promptly, and last but not least, protect slopes. So these are all erosion control BMPs, and we may also have to implement some sediment control best management practices. And you'll see here about these a lot because we do have a guide, a resource available to you. Again, it's posted on our website, Oklahoma City Stormwater Quality's webpage. You will find the Stormwater Quality Best Management Practices Manual for construction and land disturbing activities. And basically here we have a number of resources available to you that outline, for example, how you install a construction entrance and exit. This will help us limit the sediment tracking onto pavement from your construction site. How to establish perimeter controls, where we can put up silt fencing, for example. We have a detail sheet that gives you clear examples and guidance on how to install those and how they need to be maintained. We want to protect storm drain inlets so that, again, we're filtering, contain that contaminant, the sediment, before it goes down the drain. Retain sediment on site by controlling dewatering practices and dust suppression. All great tools and resources we can use and practices to, again, provide a level of protection to our waterways. And as you do that, we'll go through and be inspecting and maintaining these controls once they're in place. Because over time, throughout the project, we do have cases where they can become damaged, they can become full and need to be replaced, or some general maintenance activities. So these need to be used in combination. And as you go through and you outline and filling in your SWPPP, you're going to identify in the template that you're using what type of controls and best management practices you plan to use. And during our review process, we'll be looking at that. And if you don't have any controls selected, we're going to ask you, have a conversation with you on what you expect to be using so we can formalize that and make sure that we have a plan and we can work with you during that process if you have any questions. The next thing we need to do is select good housekeeping best management practices. We kind of hit on some of these last year when we talked about floatables, but we need to provide for waste management. We need to have trash dumpsters, containers. They need to be closed when they're not in use. We need to establish proper building management staging areas. So as you're bringing supplies onto the property for the project, that they're covered, that are secondary containment, that they're closed when not in use, so we don't have spills or releases. We need to have washout areas. Concrete washout is something very commonly that we see on construction projects. We need to make sure we have a place for our fueling operations, maintenance practices, so that, again, if we do have a spiller release, we're able to contain it, minimize the impact to the environment. We also need to take a look at how we're going to control equipment or vehicle washing and those allowable non-stormwater discharges. You'll identify some of those in your SWIP and what you anticipate that you would have, but we still want to make sure we're managing them appropriately so that we don't have any type of discharge going off-site. And last but not least, develop a spill prevention and response plan. We hope we don't have accidents, but as we're doing projects, people are involved, equipment is moving, accidents do happen. We need to have a plan and know what to do and how to respond to clean up a spill or release should one occur. And that involves having spill kits, having supplies and equipment available there for use if needed. So once we have gathered all this information, we're going to collect it and we're going to now formalize it in a couple of ways. First of all, we need to develop site maps, and the location map, this is where you're physically going to tell us where your project is located geographically. So it's in relation to streets, longitude, latitude, cross streets if you don't have an address, so that we're able to locate it within the city limits. But we're also going to ask for a site map, and the site map is going to formalize where we're going to have controls and items on the project site. For example, where the portable toilets are going to be located, your material storage areas, your fueling and maintenance operations, where that concrete washout will be located. If you have any trash receptacles, then debris containers, where you're planning to have spill kits, so that you not only do we know where it's at, but this is information that's going to be communicated to everyone on your site that is performing work. So they know that if they do have a spiller release, where those spill kits are located. If you plan on having stockpiling of sediment or anything like that, where those will be, what type of controls we'll have in place throughout the entire project through our best management practices. So this is a way in which we look to see, you identified the concerns, you identified the controls in place, and this is outlining it for you how you're going to implement that on your project site. Josh mentioned in his response a minute ago a number of things about inspections. As we implement this, we are required to conduct inspections, perform maintenance, and maintain records as part of our permit. So you'll need to follow the inspection schedule that's outlined in your SWIP. You do have an option of every 7 days if you're located in an aquatic resource of concern or impaired body water discharge, aka Lake Thunderbird Watershed. Then we're going to be required to inspect every 7 days. Now, the Oklahoma City SWIP template, it also outlines that if you have a project under 1 acre, that we're going to inspect every 7 days. If you have a larger project with the EQ template, you could select this every 14 days. So we want to follow what's designated in our SWIP and document those inspections. And then also going to outline that we will inspect the site within 24 hours of a storm event of a 1/2 inch or greater of material. And document. If you didn't document your inspections, then how do we know they're occurring? We also want you to show, be honest and tell us, what you found and then how you fixed it, because that shows us the intent and that you're actively engaged in monitoring your project and the stormwater quality issues or concerns on site. Also want to point out to you that a permit requires us to post a notice of intent, the location of your SWIP, and a point of contact. Usually this is posted at the construction entrance. And we're required to maintain our records for 3 years after the permit has been terminated. As you go through the project and you are developing your program, your project, remember that the SWIP is a living document, and we understand that. So you're going to go through, you're going to provide updates to it, whether you're doing training sessions for new hires, your annual training, or if you have a special concern or issue and you've done a specialized training session, record those, put them in your SWIP. The inspections you've conducted and corrective actions you've taken need to be documented in your SWIP. And if you have changes to your project, I get calls all the time, and Monica, we're going to have to do this or this. And my response is update your SWIP. Okay, update those project milestones, the conditions, or whatever is going on, and adjust your controls to meet the issues or concerns that you are now dealing with. This is a living document, and it's designed to help us proactively manage the discharges. Josh, do inspectors want to see the SWIP?
Yeah, of course we want to see the SWIP. Like Monica's just mentioned before, the SWIP's going to contain, a lot of information that we're looking for. It's going to, contact information to site, personnel. It's going to be doing corrections and, remediation of controls and BMPs. It's going to tell us, potential, pollutants that your project's gonna potentially, have on it. It's going to tell us what inspection frequency you guys are going to be inspecting your controls. It's going to show those reports, your inspection reports. It's going to have site maps on it. And also we want to make sure that, your SWPPP is being updated, to reflect, what's actually going on currently, at your project site. So those are, those are the things that we're looking for whenever we want to see your SWPPP. A lot of times, it may be just as simple as, you've changed a superintendent or some of the project has changed and we don't have that contact information. And, we're trying to contact the superintendent that was on the original NOI and SWPPP paperwork. And so just simple changes like that need to be made with your SWPPP. So, we're able to contact the right people to make, to relay those corrections that may need to be made on your side. So, yeah, we definitely want to look at that SWPPP, Monica.
And, when you submit your NOI and your SWPPP, we upload that into our database. And so if there's a times where you're like, we're not going to be on site, but we want this, you had an update to your SWPPP, feel free to send that into our office and we will upload that to our database. So the inspectors have the latest and greatest version of your SWPPP when they do go on site to do an inspection. So in summary, the SWPPP has several key major objectives. We want to protect receiving water bodies. We want to minimize the area and duration of exposed soil. We want to follow and implement pollution prevention measures and implement those best management practices to deal with sediment and erosion control and good housekeeping practices to prevent and minimize potential pollutants from reaching our bodies of water. And stabilize the site as soon as possible. Again, we want to get back to stabilize as much as possible to prevent those releases to a potential nearby water source. So today we've talked about a number of key steps that we go through to develop and implement a SWPPP. We talked about site assessment and planning, or selecting erosion and sediment control best management practices, selecting good housekeeping BMPs, and also we talked about outlining your inspection, maintenance, and record keeping practices that you plan to utilize throughout the life of your permit. Once you've developed your SWPPP, we now need to implement that. And you do that by formally applying for a permit, where you submit a notice of intent, your developed SWPPP, and any applicable permits, depending upon where your project is located. You may need a floodplain permit, a 404 notification, for example. And then we're going to implement the SWPPP, and we'll do that by installing our BMPs, conducting inspections, and performing maintenance. And that's an ongoing process throughout the life of that permit, through the life until your project is completed. And once you've completed all of your land disturbing activities and we have stabilized it, we want to then terminate the permit. And we do that by stabilizing the impacted areas, removing the BMPs that were placed for protection during the project, and submitting a notice of intent. And all of that kind of formalizes into implementation throughout your project. Kind of looks like this. This is an example of an illustration for a small residential construction site, but no matter what the size, these measures all come into play. As you can see here, we'll start off with number one here. We want to protect vegetation, right, or existing trees and things like that. We then want to take a look at how if we are going to have to stockpile material, that we have protective materials around that to contain the material and keep it on site. We then want to take a look at how the materials, if we have for the project itself, are being staged. Are they on secondary containment? Are they covered? Are they protected from the elements? Do that here in step number 3. Then we want to take a look at what trash and waste will be generated as part of the project. And do we need to have waste receptacles? If so, we want to make sure that they're covered, that we have designated waste labeled, appropriate for the contractor's employees to know where to place that waste, so we don't create floatables or concerns like that. And then we want to make sure we have our installed perimeter controls around the entire project, again, contain the sediment on site. And then we want to also install inlet protection and make sure we're maintaining that. Check it on your part of your inspection process to make sure they're in good condition and not full. overflowing, that they're there to serve and do the intent of why we installed them. If we then have concrete, we need a concrete washout. Make sure that that's installed properly. Remember, we have a best management, a BMP manual available on our website that shows you how to install these. And also we'll point out some key things you need to look at as you're maintaining them. And then our construction entrance. You know, a lot of times we have residents who report to us where we have construction projects where they see a lot of heavy tracking of sediment. And so this will help you prevent that. So make sure that that's installed correctly, that it's well maintained on site, and that we're communicating information to everyone involved with the project. And we do that by having our construction entrance here, where you have your signs posted with your notice of intent, where your SWPPP is located, a contact point, if someone has a question or concern they can reach out to. And last but not least, we want to stabilize the site once your project is completed, and we've completed all of our land disturbing activities so that we're able, again, to close out the permit. So, you know, there's a lot of things that go into play in developing a SWPPP. And as we provided you with a number of resources to do that, we have templates available to you, we have maps, we have a best management practice manual available on our website. But if you still have questions or concerns, please feel free to call us. Our main office number is listed here on the screen for you. And we have designated environmental technicians within each section of Oklahoma City that was very eager to help you maintain your permit, and make improvements or address any concerns you may have. We also have Jimmy and I in the office. We're reviewing plans as they come in and offering feedback to you, so that we can help you be as successful as possible as you are implementing your permit, as you're going through with your project. Rebecca, did we have any questions or comments? I haven't been able to see chat.
Yeah, thank you, Monica and Josh. Such a great presentation and interesting information. Since you've already asked me, I will go ahead and ask the questions that have been asked. Gary asks, does anyone have the link to Oklahoma City's stormwater pollution prevention plan examples? And I did post that website into chat, but if you have a minute, would you mind pulling that website up and going through that real quick?
Oh, okay.
So everybody can see where those forms are and things.
What I do is I just put in Oklahoma City stormwater. It comes up. And here is our main page. And, you know, throughout the presentation, I talked a lot about the tools and resources available on here. And if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you're going to see the ordinances. This is what we have to comply with. And we help you do that with our templates and the tools that we provided here to you. Now, if we're doing an industrial SWPPP, and Chris will be talking about that next month, you'll go to the industrial permit forms. If we're filling out construction, you're going to go to the construction section. And here you'll see 6.2, the Oklahoma City Construction SWPPP, less than 1 acre. And you're also going to see the Oklahoma the Department of Environmental Quality SWPPP template on here also. But throughout your permit, you're going to see a number of forms on here that you may need. Your notice of intent, your notice of terminations are on here. If you have a sale or a transfer of property, we ask that you have to transfer that property. That form is also available on here. So the maps are in the map section. And then you also have a section for additional documents. For our best management practice manual will be found in this section. Good question.
Okay, great, thanks. And then who should develop the SWPPP and implement it? So who does that? And then when does that occur?
And so that goes back to those common questions that were asked quite a bit. And the operator, so we need to have someone who is, you know, operator control, who can be the operator, the owner of the property. All right. And then we have contractors who may be over the day-to-day operations of the site. So either one of those can be permanent, and sometimes it's both of them, depending upon how the project is laid out and who has what responsibilities. But your notice of intent and your SWPPP needed to be developed, approved, and a permit issued before we start any land disturbing activities. And so if you have questions on how long that's going to take, you know, our review is very quick. But depending upon where your project is located, if you're in a floodplain, we will not issue our stormwater quality permit until you've obtained a floodplain permit. And that takes a couple of weeks to obtain. If you have a waterway involved where 404 notification is required, Again, we're going to send you to the Corps to obtain that information, and we'll rely till we get that back before we issue our permit. So depending upon the parameters of your project, I encourage you to apply for your permit early on, and then we will be providing feedback to you on whether additional permits are needed and how you can obtain those.
Okay, cool. Be sure to stop sharing your screen if you would, with that little X next to the leave button. Thank you. Thank you so much. Again, great presentation. Appreciate you and Josh and the great information that you bring to the table on a day-to-day basis. Y'all are very knowledgeable, and I appreciate that. Up next, our Community Relations Coordinator, Brooke Varick, will provide some information on local programs that help keep our community clean and some volunteer opportunities. Brooke, are you ready to share your screen?
Yes, I am ready. All right, this is just going to be a quick presentation today. I'm going to tell you a little bit what's going on with our public outreach information and what opportunities are coming up for you guys. If it'll change, my slides don't want to change. There we go. Okay, we do have our 2022 special collection scheduled. It is going to be held on Saturday, April 2nd. This is a event where Oklahoma City residents can bring tires, medication, ammunition, and computers for free disposal. It is open to Oklahoma City residents only. Last year, I have our totals listed. We had about 450 participants last year, over 45,000 pounds of tires, 400 pounds of ammunition, 375 pounds of medication, and I'm not sure what happened to that number, but I think it was like 115,000 pounds of computers. I'll have to fix that. So if you have questions about the special collection coming up, and it will be located at the fairgrounds. Sorry, that's kind of an important detail. But if you have other questions, feel free to let me know. We also just opened our rain barrel purchase again. Every year for the past, I don't know, about 7 years, we have partnered with the Central Oklahoma Stormwater Alliance and Upcycle Products to provide these discounted rain barrels. These rain barrels are pretty cool because they are recycled materials. They are recycling them from food grade products and then creating a new product for the rain barrels. And we've partnered with them to provide our residents a discounted rate for the rain barrels. So if you're interested in purchasing a rain barrel, I am going to post the link to their website in the chat when I'm done with this presentation, or you can email me and I can send it to you privately as well. You will have to pick up your rain barrel on either Saturday, May 7th or Saturday, May 14th, and we will have more information on the pickup once you've placed your order and once you're interested in an order. But that is open and ready for taking orders now. And then last, I'm going to touch just on the virtual lunch and learn again. Rebecca already posted the sign up link in the chat, and I've actually seen a couple people sign up already during the presentation, so that's great. It's going to be Wednesday, February 9th at noon. It will be virtual, and the topic will be stormwater infiltration and cleaning upstream, and it will be sponsored by Upstream Technologies. So feel free to sign up for that. I will be sending out a link via email to sign up as well. So look for that in your emails to come soon. And then as always, our volunteer programs. It's a new year. You might be looking for something to get involved in with your organization. We have Adopt a City Street. We have a Waterway Clean Sweep program, and we have Curbs to Creeks. I'm not going to go into too much detail on them today, but if you are interested in getting your organization involved in a volunteer opportunity, please reach out and let me know. And if you have any questions, this is my info, and I'm going to turn it back over to Rebecca, and I will post the link in chat for the rain barrels. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Brooke. Again, if anyone has any questions, please type them into chat at this time if you'd like them to be answered right now. If not, you can email her later. As a reminder, if anyone would like to receive a certificate of attendance for today's presentation along with one PDH hour, please send an email to Heavenly, and I'll put her email into chat as well. And then, let's see. Do not, if you would, please don't request certificates of attendance via chat because we may not have your email associated with your username on Teams. But we should hopefully be able to get those certificates of attendance out this week. And as I've mentioned, a recording of today's webinar will be available on our website at the location I just posted in chat. If you recall the website that Monica showed us, just on the left, you go to workshops, stormwater workshops, and all of our webinars from last year. From that floatable series are in there, plus this year's will also be in that same general location. So thank you all for attending today's session. We hope that everyone enjoyed today's presentation. We'll see you next month for our next installment in our webinar series. Next month, the information will be provided by Chris Stewart, our industrial section supervisor, covering industrial stormwater pollution prevention plan. So I hope everyone has a great afternoon. I'm going to hang out here for just a few minutes. If anyone has any questions for us today, Monica and Brooke, if you'd hang out for just a little bit as well, if you don't mind. And then if not, then thank you again. And be sure to hit that leave button in the upper right-hand corner so it will actually disconnect you from the meeting. All right. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great afternoon.